The story of Matt Armstrong and his fight with Bugatti starts with a simple but shocking idea. What if a problem that costs hundreds of thousands of pounds to fix is actually caused by something worth just a few pounds? This question is what grabbed the attention of millions of car fans around the world. Bugatti is known for building some of the most expensive and advanced cars ever made, including the famous Bugatti Veyron. These cars are often seen as untouchable machines that only factory-trained experts can repair. For years, people believed that if something serious went wrong with Bugatti, the only solution was to go back to manufacturer and pay whatever price they asked. That belief is exactly what Matt Armstrong challenged. Instead of accepting the idea that these cars are impossible to fix outside official channels, he decided to take a closer look. His journey did not start with confidence or support from big companies. It started with curiosity, determination, and a willingness to question what everyone else accepted as a truth. When Bugatti claimed that a gearbox problem would cost around 300,000 pounds to fix, most people did not question it. They assumed the company must be right because of its reputation and expertise. But Matt saw things differently. He believed that every problem has a cause, and every cause can be investigated. This mindset is what turned a simple repair story into something much bigger. It became a story about knowledge, access, and the power of independent thinking. From the very beginning, this situation was not just about fixing a car. It was about challenging a system where information is limited and costs are extremely high. For many viewers, this story felt personal because it showed that even the most complex machines are not always as mysterious as they seem. Sometimes, the truth is much simpler than expected. And sometimes, all it takes is one person willing to look deeper to change how everyone else sees the world. When Matt Armstrong bought a damaged Bugatti Veyron, many people thought he was taking a huge risk. This was not just any car. It was a machine worth millions, known for its extreme engineering and complexity. On top of that, the car had a serious issue. The gearbox was not working, and according to Bugatti, this was not something that could be repaired. Their official position was clear. The gearbox was a sealed unit. It could not be opened, it could not be fixed, and it had to be replaced entirely. The cost for this replacement was said to be around 300,000 pounds. For most people, that number alone would be enough to walk away. In fact, that is exactly what had happened before. The previous owner of the car could not justify such a massive repair bill, so the car ended up being repossessed and eventually sold. This is where Matt stepped in. Instead of seeing a broken car, he saw an opportunity to understand what was really going on. He did not accept the idea that the problem was impossible to fix. Instead, he began to investigate it step by step. This approach is very different from simply replacing parts without asking questions. It requires time, patience, and a willingness to learn. Many people assume that modern cars, especially hypercars, are too complicated for independent repair. But Matt's approach showed that complexity does not mean impossibility. By carefully examining the problem and using basic diagnostic methods, he started to uncover details that others had missed. This is an important part of the story because it highlights a key difference between two ways of thinking. One way is to accept high costs and limited access as normal. The other is to question those limits and try to find a better solution. Matt chose the second path, and that decision is what led to one of the most surprising outcomes in recent automotive history. To understand why this story is so important, it helps to look at how the gearbox in the Bugatti Veyron actually works. The gearbox is not just a simple set of gears. It is a highly advanced system that uses hydraulics and electronics to change gears smoothly and quickly. Inside the system, there are components called solenoids which control the flow of transmission fluid. This fluid pressure is what allows the gears to engage properly. Without the right pressure, the gearbox cannot function. The pressure itself is created by a hydraulic pump that is powered electronically when the car is turned on. This means that the entire system depends not only on mechanical parts, but also on electrical signals and components. If something goes wrong anywhere in this chain, the gearbox may stop working. In the case of Matt's car, the problem appeared serious at first. The car would not select gears and remain stuck, which is exactly the kind of symptom that would lead many to assume a major failure. This is why Bugatti concluded that the gearbox needed to be replaced. However, what makes this story interesting is that no detailed investigation seemed to have been done before reaching that conclusion. Instead of checking each part of the system step by step, the solution was given immediately. Replace the entire unit. This approach might save time for the manufacturer, but it does not always lead to the most accurate result. Matt's decision to look deeper into the system changed everything. By understanding how each part works together, he was able to narrow down the possible causes of the problem. This is a key lesson for anyone interested in cars or engineering. Even the most complex systems can be understood if you break them down into smaller parts. And when you do that, you often discover that the problem is not as big as it first appears. The real turning point in this story came during the diagnostic process. Matt Armstrong did not work alone. He brought in help from experts like Ricky, who could connect to the car's diagnostic system remotely. This allowed them to read data from the car and understand what it was trying to do. According to the system, the gearbox pump was being activated, which meant that everything should have been working. But there was a problem. Matt could not hear the pump running in real life. This difference between what the computer reported and what was actually happening was a major clue. It suggested that the issue was not inside the gearbox itself, but somewhere in the electrical supply. This is where careful thinking and observation made a big difference. Instead of assuming the worst, Matt followed the evidence. He started checking the electrical components that could affect the pump. Eventually, he reached the fuse box. This is not the first place most people would look when dealing with a gearbox problem, but it turned out to be the most important. Inside the fuse box, he found something unusual. One of the fuses had melted and become stuck in place. It was not just blown. It had been damaged in a way that allowed current to pass through without proper control. This meant that the system was not protected, and the pump was not receiving power correctly. Even more interesting was the fact that the fuse had been replaced with a higher-rated one at some point. This is a common mistake. When a fuse keeps blowing, some people replace it with a stronger one instead of finding the real cause. This can lead to bigger problems, as it allows too much current to flow through the system. In this case, it created a situation where the gearbox stopped working completely. Once the damaged fuse was identified, the solution became surprisingly simple. Matt Armstrong removed the faulty component and replaced it with a correctly rated fuse. This was not a special part from Bugatti. It was a standard fuse that could be bought from a regular automotive store like Halford's. The cost was only a few pounds, which makes the outcome even more shocking. After installing the new fuse, Matt turned on the car and listened carefully. This time, the pump started running as it should. That was the first sign that the problem had been solved. But the real test came when he tried to select gears. One by one, the gearbox responded perfectly. The car that had been completely stuck was now fully functional again. It could move forward, reverse, and operate just like it was supposed to. This moment was not just satisfying. It was emotional. Matt himself was visibly shaken because he understood what this meant. A problem that had been labeled as a 300,000-pound failure was actually caused by a small and inexpensive component. This result challenged not only the original diagnosis, but also the entire idea that such systems cannot be repaired. It showed that careful investigation can lead to very different conclusions. For viewers, this moment was powerful because it proved that the situation was not as hopeless as it seemed. It also raised an important question. How many other cases like this exist? If one car could be fixed so easily, it is possible that others were misdiagnosed as well. This is where the story moves beyond a single repair and becomes something much bigger. The wider impact of this discovery is what makes the story truly significant. When Matt Armstrong fixed a Bugatti Veyron with a simple fuse, it raised serious questions about how repairs are handled in the automotive industry. The idea of a sealed unit means that certain components are not meant to be opened or repaired. Instead, they are replaced entirely when something goes wrong. This approach can be convenient for manufacturers, but often leads to very high costs for owners. In this case, the difference between the official solution and the actual fix was huge. A 300,000-pound replacement was reduced to a repair costing only a few pounds. This gap is what caught the attention of so many people. It suggests that the system may not always prioritize accurate diagnosis. Instead, it may focus on faster and more profitable solutions. This is where the discussion connects to a larger movement known as the right to repair. Laws and regulations are being developed to ensure that consumers and independent technicians have access to the information and parts they need to fix products. In regions like Europe, new rules are expected to make it harder for companies to restrict repairs. This could lead to more transparency and lower costs for consumers. The story of Matt Armstrong is often seen as an example of why these changes are needed. It shows that independent work can uncover solutions that might otherwise be missed. At the same time, it highlights the importance of knowledge and access. Without the ability to investigate and test the car, this discovery would not have been possible. As more people become aware of these issues, the pressure on manufacturers to change their practices may increase. This could lead to a future where repairs are more open, affordable, and fair for everyone involved. In the end, the story of Matt Armstrong and the Bugatti Veyron is not just about one car or one repair. It is about changing the way people think about complex machines and the systems built around them. For years, many believed that certain vehicles were beyond the reach of independent mechanics. They were seen as products that could only be understood and repaired by the companies that made them. This belief created a sense of distance between owners and their own cars. But this story shows that things can be different. With the right approach, even the most advanced systems can be explored and understood. It also shows that mistakes can happen at any level, even in the most respected companies. What matters is how those mistakes are handled, and whether there's a willingness to look deeper. The reaction from the automotive community has been strong. Many people see this as a victory for independent repair and a reminder that questioning assumptions can lead to better outcomes. At the same time, it is important to remember that not every problem will have such a simple solution. Cars like the Veyron are still extremely complex, and many repairs do require specialized knowledge. However, this case proves that it is always worth investigating before accepting the most expensive option. For viewers and car enthusiasts, the message is clear. Do not be afraid to ask questions, learn new things, and challenge what you are told. Sometimes, the answer is not as complicated as it seems, and sometimes a small part can make a very big difference. Another important part of this story is how it connects other owners and similar situations, especially cases like Mark McCann, who also had issues with the Bugatti Veyron. What makes this connection interesting is that both cars were believed to have serious gearbox problems, and both were linked to extremely expensive repair quotes. In fact, there were moments where these cars were owned by the same person, which adds another layer to the story. When two vehicles show similar symptoms, it usually means there could be a shared cause. However, instead of investigating deeper, the standard response remained the same: replace the gearbox. This raises an important question about how many cars might have been treated in the same way. If one Veyron could be fixed with a simple fuse, then it is possible that others were also misdiagnosed. Owners who received huge repair quotes may have believed they had no choice but to sell their cars or leave them unused. For many people, a Bugatti is not just a machine. It is a dream and a symbol of success. Walking away from such a car because of a repair cost is not an easy decision. That is why this story feels so powerful. It shows that the difference between losing a car and enjoying it again can sometimes come down to proper diagnosis. It also highlights the emotional impact of these situations. Owners trust manufacturers to provide accurate information, especially when dealing with complex systems. When that trust is questioned, it creates frustration and doubt. The case of Matt Armstrong suggests that more transparency could help prevent these situations. If independent checks were more common, owners might have more confidence in the repair process. This could lead to better outcomes and fewer cases where cars are abandoned because of high costs. In the end, the connection between different owners and similar problems shows that this is not just a single event. It is part of a larger pattern that deserves attention and discussion. The role of diagnostics in this story cannot be ignored because it is the key factor that changed everything. When Matt Armstrong and his team began analyzing the Bugatti Veyron, they relied on both technology and basic observation. Modern cars are filled with sensors and computer systems that provide detailed information about how the vehicle is operating. These systems are designed to help technicians identify problems quickly. However, they are not perfect. In this case, the car system indicated that the gearbox pump was working, even though it was not physically running. This difference between digital information and real-world behavior is very important. It shows that diagnostics should not rely only on computer data. Physical checks are just as necessary. By listening, observing, and testing components directly, Matt was able to identify the gap between what the system reported and what was actually happening. This is a valuable lesson for anyone working with modern technology. Computers can guide the process, but they cannot replace human understanding. The combination of both is what leads to accurate results. Another important point is that access to diagnostic tools played a big role. Not everyone has the ability to connect to advanced systems or interpret the data correctly. This is one of the reasons why manufacturers often control repair processes. However, as this story shows, limiting access can also limit solutions. If independent technicians are given the right tools and information, they can contribute valuable insights. This could lead to better outcomes for everyone involved. The success of this repair highlights the importance of keeping diagnostics open and accessible. It encourages a more balanced approach where both manufacturers and independent experts can work together. In the future, this could lead to a system where problems are solved more efficiently and accurately, without unnecessary costs or delays. Another key issue raised by this story is the idea of responsibility and accountability in the automotive world. When Bugatti provides a repair quote, it carries a lot of weight because of the company's reputation. Customers expect that such a quote is based on careful analysis and accurate information. However, the discovery made by Matt Armstrong suggests that this may not always be the case. If a simple electrical issue can be mistaken for a major mechanical failure, it raises concerns about how decisions are made during the diagnostic process. It is important to understand that large companies often deal with time constraints and standard procedures. Replacing a complete unit can sometimes be faster and more reliable than repairing individual parts. However, this approach may not always be fair to the customer, especially when the cost difference is so large. This is where accountability becomes important. Customers should have the right to know how a diagnosis was reached and what alternatives exist. Transparency can help build trust and ensure that decisions are made in the best interest of the owner. The story also shows that independent voices can play a role in improving the system. By sharing his findings publicly, Matt brought attention to an issue that might otherwise have remained hidden. This kind of openness can encourage companies to review their processes and make improvements where needed. It also empowers customers to ask more questions and seek second opinions. In many industries, competition leads to better services and lower costs. The same principle can apply here. When independent experts are allowed to participate, it creates a more balanced environment. This benefits not only car owners, but also the industry as a whole. In the long run, accountability and transparency can lead to better outcomes for everyone. The influence of this story goes beyond the automotive industry and touches on broader ideas about technology and ownership. Modern products, whether they are cars, phones, or appliances, are becoming more complex and more controlled by manufacturers. This often means that users have limited ability to repair or modify their own devices. The experience of Matt Armstrong with the Bugatti Veyron shows that this model is not always ideal. When access is restricted, it can lead to higher costs and fewer solutions. On the other hand, when information is shared and systems are open, it can lead to innovation and creativity. This is why the right to repair movement is gaining support around the world. People want the ability to understand and fix the products they own. They want to have choices instead of being limited to a single option. The Bugatti case is a powerful example because it involves a product at the highest level of engineering. If even a hypercar can benefit from independent investigation, then the same idea can apply to many other products. This does not mean that manufacturers should lose control over their designs. Instead, it suggests that a balance is needed. By working together with independent experts, companies can improve their products and build stronger relationships with customers. This approach can also lead to new ideas and better solutions. In the end, the goal should be to create systems that are both advanced and accessible. Technology should not create barriers. It should create opportunities. The story of this repair reminds us that knowledge is powerful, and sharing can lead to positive change in many areas of life as the story continues to spread. It is clear that the impact of Matt Armstrong fixing a Bugatti Veyron with a simple fuse will not fade quickly. It has already changed how many people think about repairs, costs, and the role of manufacturers. For some, it is a reminder that even the most advanced systems can have simple problems. For others, it is a call to question what they are told and look for better answers. The automotive community has reacted strongly, with many people sharing their own experiences and opinions. Some support the idea of independent repair, while others believe that manufacturers have valid reasons for their policies. This mix of views is healthy because it encourages discussion and progress. What is certain is that this story has opened the door for more conversations about fairness, access, and innovation. It has shown that one person's effort can make a big difference and inspire others to think differently. As technology continues to evolve, these discussions will become even more important. The balance between control and freedom will shape how products are designed and used in the future. In this context, the Bugatti repair story is more than just a viral moment. It is an example of how change can begin with a simple question. What if there's another way? By asking that question and following it with action, Matt Armstrong demonstrated the power of curiosity and determination. His work reminds us that progress often starts with challenging the status quo, and being willing to explore new possibilities. One of the most interesting lessons from this entire situation is how small decisions can lead to very large consequences over time. In the case of the Bugatti Veyron, the issue started with something as simple as a fuse blowing. A fuse is designed to protect the system by breaking the circuit when too much current flows through it. It is a safety feature, not a problem by itself. However, when someone replaces a blown fuse with a higher rated one instead of finding the real cause, it can create a chain reaction of issues. This is exactly what happened before Matt Armstrong got the car. Each time the fuse failed, it was a warning sign that something was wrong in the system. Instead of investigating, the response was to use stronger fuses, allowing more current to pass through. Over time, this caused heat to build up and eventually damaged the fuse box itself. By the time Matt inspected the car, the situation had become much worse than it needed to be. This shows how important it is to understand the purpose of each component in a system. Ignoring small problems can turn them into much bigger ones. It also highlights the value of proper repair practices. Taking shortcuts might seem like a quick solution, but often leads to higher costs and more complicated issues later. In this case, a simple mistake created a situation that looked like a major failure. Without careful diagnosis, it could have remained that way. The lesson here is clear. Every part of the system matters, no matter how small it seems. When something goes wrong, it is always better to find the root cause instead of applying temporary fixes. This approach not only saves money, but also prevents further damage. For anyone working with machines or technology, this is a principle that can be applied in many situations. Small details can make a big difference, and understanding them is a key to solving problems effectively. Another angle to consider in this story is the role of trust between customers and manufacturers like Bugatti. When someone buys a high-end product such as a Bugatti Veyron, they are not just paying for performance and design. They are also paying for the promise of support, expertise, and reliability. This creates a strong expectation that any advice or diagnosis provided by the manufacturer will be accurate and fair. However, when a situation like this occurs, it can weaken that trust. If a customer is told that a repair will cost hundreds of thousands of pounds, only to later discover that the actual issue was minor, it raises serious concerns. Even if such cases are rare, they can have a big impact on how people view the brand. Trust is not built only on success stories. It is also built on how problems are handled. In this case, the difference between the official solution and the real fix was too large to ignore. This is why transparency is so important. Customers need to feel confident that they are being given all the necessary information to make informed decisions. When information is limited or controlled, it can create doubt and frustration. On the other hand, open communication can strengthen relationships and improve customer satisfaction. The story also shows that trust works both ways. Manufacturers need to trust that independent experts can contribute positively, and customers need to trust that their interests are being considered. Building this balance is not easy, especially in industries where technology is complex and competition is high. However, it is essential for long-term success. By learning from cases like this, companies can improve their processes and ensure that they meet the expectations of their customers. In the end, trust is one of the most valuable assets any brand can have, and protecting it should always be a priority. Looking ahead, the impact of this story may influence how future repairs are approached, not just for hypercars, but for all types of vehicles.